So I think for me, once you approach that age bracket of your 40s and now going into your 50s and 60s, I mean, you're looking, possibly at the second half of your life, God willing. And then you need to take stock of everything, right? And in fact, I distinctly remember walking into this gym and the personal trainer wanted to do a strength test on me. And so he asked me to do a particular exercise on a machine and I could barely move it. And he hadn't even inserted the pin in terms of my physical journey. I had to look at my peers. That was one of the things. And I said to myself, do I want to be the person who's now starting to have chronic back pain, chronic knee pain, picking up something that is heavy and doing some form of resistance training? To me is a must. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman.
Welcome back to the Shujaa Fitcast. We have another guest for you guys. Thank you so much to everyone who has shown support for the show so far. This is yet another episode where we hope to inspire you, where we hope to have more fulfilling conversations that give you a lot more perspective about not just fitness, but the possibilities surrounding what happens when you get your fitness in order. And I think today especially is a show where we will do quite a bit of that because the guest we have in studio today is a bit different from a lot of the other guests we've had so far because he's a man of many trades. He has a lot of things going on which he'll share with us. But I'll do my best to give him somewhat of an intro, but he'll give us more from himself. But today we have Derek Bbanga. Karibu sana. He is a speaker, he's a professional, he is a public image consultant, he's a fitness enthusiast, he's a corporate guru, he's a lot of things, and I'm sure you can give us a better description than I just gave you because I feel like you work in so many, you're an actor. I forgot that one. I'm sure there might be someone who'll watch this and recognize you from a show that you have out. But karibu sana, tell us a bit about yourself, what you're up to, what brings you here today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. This is great. I love talking about fitness, anything related to wellness, whether it's mental or physical or emotional. So I'm sure this is going to be an interesting conversation. But just to add on to some of the things that you said, I think for me, it's about helping people to be seen, to be heard, and to be remembered for the right reasons. So being seen, obviously there's your professional image, depending on what industry you're in, how you are seen. I think physically that plays an image as well. How do people notice you? What's your body language? When you walk into a room, do people stand up and take notice? So that incorporates part of fitness. Being heard, which is literally how does your voice work? How are you able to communicate? How are you able to persuade? It could be your clients or it could be the personal people in your life, your family and your friends. And then being remembered. So ultimately, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's a famous quote about your personal brand. What do people say about you when you're in the room? What do you want to be remembered for? What mark do you leave on people? And so that again encompasses everything that I've mentioned before, and including things like, the emotional intelligence. How did you touch people? What do people remember about you? And that's what I do. Yeah.
Nice. So how does Derek help people improve their public image? What does that look like?
Well, very often what will happen is a client will come to me, and most of my clients happen to be in the corporate world. So it could be a sales team, it could be C-suite managers, it could even be a board of directors, it could be new hires at a consulting firm. And they'll come to me and they'll say, well, Derek, we're having some challenges in terms of increasing our sales, or we're having some challenges connecting with our clients, or retaining customers, or attracting new customers. And so my approach is, well, what are you doing in order to be able, other than the technical aspects of your job, to be able to attract those clients, to retain those clients, to persuade those clients? And I take people through everything from their professional image, obviously depending on what industry they're in. Yeah. It could be aspects of body language, even how you use your voice, how you communicate, what your business etiquette is, up to and including things like sales, customer service. A lot of these programs are bespoke, depending on who the client is. Public speaking. So some people, it is just about, well, how do I stand up in front of a room full of 200 or 2,000 people and get my message across in order for them to buy my product?
Yeah. And emotional intelligence, that's something that I've come across before, but give us an idea of why it's important, what is it, and how does it play into everything we do?
Yeah. Well, it goes without saying we all have emotions, but the ability to manage those emotions, to use them for your benefit and for the benefit of the other person. Because in life, we're going to be faced with all types of circumstances, all right? And these emotions that we go through, if we're able to manage them, in other words, manage them in order to be able to get the best out of ourselves within that particular situation, then that to me is emotional intelligence. How do you process them? And particularly when you're dealing with strong or unhealthy emotions, anger, anxiousness, okay, disappointment. How do you manage that emotion in real time when you're with a client or even when you're with your family? That ability is called emotional intelligence, and that's how I help the people that I work with.
Yeah. Do you find that in the corporate space that that conversation is like, is it new? Are people looking at you like, what is this you're bringing to us? I thought it's about numbers, how much money we're bringing in, or is it something that people are embracing?
Yeah, that's a great question. But it goes without saying that this is something that a lot of organizations are recognizing as important, in addition to the technical aspects that somebody brings to work, or in terms of how we perceive success in a particular organization. And in fact, if you look at leaders today, the majority of leaders who are great, that people look up to, they absolutely have EI or EQ, emotional intelligence, as a component, in addition to the technical skills and obviously academic qualifications required for that job. So this is something that is becoming a must-have, and not just a nice-to-have, in order to get the best out of not just yourself, but perhaps in leadership, the team that you're leading.
Interesting. And I think something that I've just remembered we touched on just before beginning is the fact that we both went to St. Mary's. So shout out to all the saints out there. Another one. I recall just the reason St. Mary's is special, I think, in terms of the kind of schooling we get there, or we've gotten there, is the fact that the aim was always to build a well-rounded individual. And you don't realize the privilege of that, aside from it being maybe a bit more expensive than other schools, and you're interacting with kids who are politicians' children, whatnot. Aside from those things that people see on the outside, there was the emphasis on the whole human, which I think is something you're communicating with the kind of work you do, is that we're more than just pencil pushers. We're more than just salesmen, saleswomen. And that's something that St. Mary's gave me a foundation in. Of course, you have to develop it further the older you get. the physical side of it, which is something in a boys' school, is very it's present. Saints is known for rugby, so the physical side of a man is emphasized in such a school. This is a fitness show. I'm sure you can tell us how the physical side of it plays into all this. How did you begin your fitness journey and realizing how fitness plays into all this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would like to say that maybe my years at St. Mary's predate yours a little bit.
Yeah,
but I'd like to think the ethos in terms of the education, like you mentioned, that St. Mary's gave you, which was that holistic, well-rounded education. And certainly that, I think, set me up for the success that I'm experiencing today and the success that I think you're experiencing today. So, shout out to St. Mary's, as you said. In terms of my fitness journey, I'm sure, just like you, I played rugby at Saints. You're the big man on campus. So, and just participating in team sports, in athletic endeavors, to build you up as a young man, so that you could be a productive part of society. I think that's really important. In terms of my own personal fitness journey, actually started a few years into my working now in the corporate world. So we're fast forwarding. I've graduated from school. I've graduated from university. Even went to graduate school, and I'm now in the real world, so to speak. And, I realized something pretty quickly. You get up, you work 8 to 5, and you come home and perhaps you're exhausted in a particular kind of way. It could be mentally, it could be physically, it could be emotionally. And for me, I was looking for ways in order to manage that particular type of exhaustion, so to speak. How am I able to get through Monday through Friday? It was a demanding job. I was working in finance in New York.
Wow.
So what could I do in order to be able to get the best out? So I could wake up on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday, or on a Friday, and still be as productive. Very often I might be on trading floors, for example. So even there was that aspect of the job where there was a little bit of physicality, whether it was walking and that sort of thing. And I quickly came to the conclusion that having some sort of fitness regimen, in addition to other things, which I'm sure we'll talk about, whether it's sleep and diet, but the fitness regimen was an important part of being able to be the best version of myself and to be the most productive as I was going through my daily duties. And that's exactly how I started. In fact, I distinctly remember walking into this gym and the personal trainer wanted to do a strength test on me. And so he asked me to do a particular exercise on a machine, and I could barely move it. And he hadn't even inserted the pin into the weights. And that was a humbling moment to realize how physically not just unfit I was, but in terms of strength. And that's where my fitness journey began. And so, as you know, once you start working out on a regular basis, the gains are pretty quick. So in a short span of time, I was able to see a physical difference when I looked in the mirror. And it also had those benefits that I mentioned in terms of mentally, I was sharper. Emotionally, I was able to handle relationships better. And I have never looked back.
Yeah. Clearly, because I'm assuming just because of how far along you are in age now and what you're describing was the beginning of your working career. So we're talking about decades of being on this journey. What has it been like managing your fitness over that length of time, and how do you stay motivated?
Now there've been a few bumps on the road. There were situations where I wasn't able to work out for a year here or a year there for one reason or another, which I won't get into. But in terms of consistently, I would say particularly the last decade. So once I hit my 40s, I doubled down on now really focusing on my fitness journey. which included even getting, qualifications in terms of a personal trainer, a nutritionist. So I actually have those qualifications. I could be a personal trainer in a gym, but that was just part of making sure that I was equipped with as much information as possible. Because once you start hitting your late 30s and your 40s, you're now kind of looking at different aspects of your life. And for me, for example, I always say life is a fight against gravity. Everything starts going south. Okay? And in order to keep everything up, part of that is, working out, going to the gym, and, just being physically active. So the last 10 years, I think, is where I would say last 10, 11, 12 years, it really is where I've doubled down and really focused on being the best physically that I can be. And actually, I can say here, hand on heart, that in terms of my physicality, I think now I'm in the best shape of my life.
Wow.
I have immaculate sleep. So that's another aspect of being physically fit and also working on things like my sleep. I have refined my diet to a point where I know what works for my body. And I am in a really good space physically. And it has also had its benefits in terms of mentally and how I approach things.
Yeah, that's so it's possible to be serious about this journey post 40, because I think there's that mentality of especially with people who are in that bracket where it's like I have my good job, I have kids, it's all good, like my body is not a big part of this conversation, so let me just ride it out into the sunset. But you're saying that actually that's when you got really serious about. Could you share some, what was the mind shift? Was it just the gravity situation you're talking about, or what was your mentality at that point that really kicked things into high gear that could help someone?
Yeah, so I think for me, once you approach that age bracket of your 40s and now going into your 50s and 60s, I mean, you're looking, possibly at the second half of your life, God willing. And then you need to take stock of everything, right? And, in a more absurd world, I would call it a midlife crisis. But it was not a midlife crisis. It was taking stock of where I am physically. What do I need to do in order for me to be able to enjoy the latter half of my life to its fullness? Okay? Yeah. And that's where for me, it wasn't just now about, lifting heavy. It was about, for example, if you're in the gym, you're lifting smart. It's about what supplements are you taking. It's about what are you doing in terms of your cardiovascular fitness. And just being a little bit more targeted and smart. Okay? The use of time. You have an hour. What is it that you're going to go to the gym, for example, and get the most out of? If you're on vacation or business travel like I do, is your fitness journey going to be stopped for 1 week just because you're on business travel? So what is it that you can still do? And so being able to gain that knowledge and to use it and to see the results, to me, has really been a game changer in terms of how I approach life in general. Yeah. And this is something that as human beings we can't help doing. You're always in somehow comparing yourself to other people. Now, again, this is a conversation we can have. Do you live your life to compare yourself to other people, comparing your successes to other people? But in terms of my physical journey, I had to look at my peers. That was one of the things. And I said to myself, do I want to be the person who's now starting to have chronic back pain, chronic knee pain?
In the wababa,
okay? Yeah.
Wababas.
And again, I am not taking pot shots, but there are a lot of people who I'll call my peers who have those, chronic pains, gut problems, back problems, knee problems. And it can simply be helped by adopting some sort of physical regimen.
So your journey has been pretty much, from what it sounds like, is that you've kind of self-guided, and of course picking up the credentials has added to that knowledge. But have you had guidance over the years from others who have helped you along your fitness journey?
Well, sure. And I mean, I think with the advent of modern technology and YouTube and podcasts like yours, the world is your oyster in terms of where you can get. In fact, if anything, there is too much information out there. You have to be a little bit judgmental and selective on where you're going to get your information from in terms of helping you, particularly along your fitness journey. But yeah, I can definitely say for me, it was just being able to listen to a podcast, watch a YouTube video here and there, and then, be selective, as I said, and pick and choose the ones that I thought were helpful to me. That is certainly the help that I've gotten.
Yeah.
I think also in terms of like the gym that you work out, as you might maybe work with a good personal trainer who can give you a few tips. Having a workout buddy or an accountability partner also helps. So there have been various things that have helped me in terms of maintaining.
Yeah. So speaking about how you used a very helpful phrase, which is lifting smart, which is something that people need to, I think, even on the younger side, of course you have more leeway when you're younger. However, I think there's value in lifting smart throughout. I think you can also lift heavy in a smart way. So it's not to say that heavy weights are bad, but describe to us in a bit more detail what you mean by lifting smart for someone who might be at your age and they want to get into, because also lifting weights can be scary for a lot of people. They see weights as this intimidating thing. But how do you approach lifting smart? And
I'm glad you've zeroed in on lifting. Picking up something that is heavy and doing some form of resistance training, to me, is a must. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, you have to do some sort of resistance training. I mean, I alluded to the fact that gravity is taking everything. So, and this is one of the ways to keep everything in place. But this resistance training is actually the best thing that you can do for your body. So when I talk about lifting smart, and again, as a young person, you're throwing about weights with abandon and you're going heavy. But actually, you can now start playing around in terms of the number of sets that you do, how many reps you do per set. So when I was younger, it was usually shorter sets, not many reps, because you were lifting, I was lifting for a lot of power and strength, which is now I'm actually lifting a little bit for my longevity. But you can still get hypertrophy. I mean, your muscles can still grow, although at my stage in life, it's more about maintaining rather than increasing the size. So for me personally, it's now, whereas I would do, 6, 7 reps, now I'm doing 15, 16, 20 reps on different exercises. And in addition to that, an important part of lifting for me is now being able to stretch. So I do a lot of stretching before, during, and after with the lifting. And that's also been beneficial and really helped me in terms of my journey. But I'll just reiterate what I said before. Some form of resistance training. Picking up a heavy object, lifting it above your head, working the upper half of your body and the lower half of your body with some form of resistance training, I think, is a must.
Do you think you mentioned you played rugby. Do you think that had any role to play in your ability to... Did it give you the foundation that made it easier for you, or do you think you pretty much just started from scratch?
I think I was naturally athletic. I mean, not only did I play rugby, I played the other sports as well, football. But, St. Mary's is known for its rugby. So I've always been the sort of person, certainly when I was younger, I wanted to be active. and I was blessed with a quote-unquote athletic body. But it's only after I completed my education and I was well into my working that I really decided to focus on working in a gym environment, or doing that sort of exercise, which is more in terms of just working on my body and how my body looks and my body shape and maintaining my weight and that sort of thing. But it's interesting that you say that, because I think rugby for me was about the team sports mentality. And so even having that aspect, so my sport now is tennis.
Oh.
That's a sport that I play. So having an additional sort of athletic sport or endeavor in addition to the work that you do, say like the resistance training, I think is really helpful. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you look great.
Thank you.
I mean, I thought that's important to say, because there's results, what you're talking about shows. So that's a good thing. In speaking about all this, because like I said before, I've watched a lot of the content you have out there, and I really would hope that at the end of this, we're able to really emphasize the holistic side of a person, and the importance of how you present yourself. In the back of my mind right now, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about the fitness industry, because that's the industry I'm in. I sometimes get the sense, because I was telling you before, I feel as though the local fitness scene is not that developed. It's growing, and we have access to information, definitely, that goes without saying. However, on the ground, I feel like there's an element of, there's something holding us back. I feel like not only is it the lack of relatable information and maybe how we work together as fitness professionals, which I'm trying to change by having this show, inviting others on, aligning our goals, seeing how we can present fitness in this digital world in a way that's accessible to people. But I feel like because you're in the public image field, there's general principles. I believe there's general principles that guide everything. So even if you might not necessarily be active in the fitness industry as a trainer, there's things you can share with us about public image that would help someone listening to this to realize, like, oh, as a trainer, this is probably something I should think about implementing more of. We talked about emotional intelligence, or EQ. What are some of these other things that you think are lacking, maybe even just generally in our industries here locally, that we need to start doing more of to push everything forward?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let me start by commending people like yourself, other fitness professionals, personal trainers. In fact, I didn't mention I did CrossFit for a number of years as well. That was part of my fitness journey. So the people who are out there opening up new gyms, taking on personal training as a career need to be commended. And they do need to be supported. It is a absolutely valid career, and there should be benefits, monetary benefits as well as other benefits to going into the fitness industry at whatever level, and that includes nutritionists, dietitians, and what have you. Let me start by saying, I'll give a story. In the 1960s in America, the late President John F. Kennedy, as a matter of national urgency, said that physical fitness, PE, I think that's what we called it when we were young, has to be part of the school curriculum. So let's start there. This needs the support from the highest levels of government. There needs to be a way of introducing this as part of our culture. Now, I know in countries like Rwanda, for example, okay, they do have the cleaning, which they do on a regular basis, but I'm not sure if it's Rwanda or which African country where senior government leaders will do regular physical activities which bring in the entire nation. so that you can actually see that emulated from the top echelons.
Leadership, yeah.
So first of all, I think there needs to be that kind of either discussion or introduction in terms of physical fitness, because you and I both know the statistics in terms of the consequences of not taking care of
obesity rates.
Yeah. So first of all, you need to start there. Then support the people who are in the fitness industry like yourself. Support these personal trainers. What can you do to professionalize it from a national, governmental standpoint, whatever that takes? Now, in terms of the industry themselves, so you have industry professionals, personal trainers, fitness trainers. They also need to take this industry as seriously as if it was part of a national edict, if you will. Obviously, it goes without saying, making sure that you have the right qualifications. Secondly, looking at that job just as an accountant or a lawyer or an engineer. What kind of professionalism does somebody in that profession bring?
Yeah.
Handling clients, marketing, facilities, encompassing everything else. I think a lot of what, in my experience, I've seen personal trainers who look at this as, quote unquote, as a side hustle. Therefore, I don't need to bring that level of professionalism to it. But if you start looking at it as I've said, akin to some of these other professionals, then you'll begin to, treat clients better, make sure that certain facilities are providing certain things for your clients, making sure there's follow-up. Just the way that any of us who are entrepreneurs, you and myself are entrepreneurs, the way I handle clients, the way you handle clients is the same way that I think the professional people in the fitness industry should start doing. So professionalizing the industry, and it starts with an individual, time management and everything that I talk about in terms of your public image. How do you present yourself? Okay. Even after work, how do you, I talk about that with my clients. Okay. Your image is not just 9 to 5. It's also what you do when you're outside of work, right? Yeah. People are going to have something to say about you. What is your brand? So I'm going to leave it at that. Just begin to take the public image or personal branding aspects of this industry more seriously. So I will say this. I have spoken at a few forums for personal trainers or people in the fitness industry. And I'd like to think, based on feedback that I got, that some of the things that I spoke about, people took on board. Okay? You've mentioned how you speak, your ability to communicate. I mean, for me, I would actually have every fitness professional go through a public speaking course. Because public speaking gives you the ability to be able to communicate succinctly to your clients. Your clients are looking for a result. Your job is to communicate with them and make sure that you are helping them along their journey to achieve fitness profile. So just being able to communicate well like that. So other than saying that I have spoken at forums and there are some fitness professionals who have been in touch with me since I've spoken to them and said, I brought this on board and it has actually helped me and has benefited me and has benefited my client.
Nice, yeah. I think communication is one of those things that by the way, I studied communication in university.
There you go.
And it's interesting because I started off doing business in uni, and I quickly realized that I'm not built for the business course. The statistics and all that, when it got into that stuff, it started getting quite difficult for me. And so it reached a point where I had to make a decision in terms of, am I going to stumble my way into a degree that I probably will not be as passionate about in terms of applying myself, or will I make a change, an uncomfortable change in the moment, but for long term gain? And I made the switch to communications. I ended up doing business as a minor because I had enough credits. But in learning the intricacies of communication, we would even look at actually TV shows in class. We would look at speeches, all sorts of things. And it was at that point that I really realized the degree to which we live in a world. First of all, cameras off, microphones off, we're always communicating, whether we like it or not. Communication is just, it's like oxygen, it's just there. And it's so crucial. And then you get into a relationship with a girl, or you get married, or you get into an argument with your parents or something, or you're with your friends. There's things that you're communicating back and forth. And I think a lot of times we don't take the time to, or maybe also nobody really took the time to tell us, or we didn't learn, or whatever. Something happens where we don't have that skill, and it is a skill. What do you think about that? Just the state of communication in general. Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to take the turn in terms of the emotional intelligence aspect, because that's part of communication.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to call it training with emotional intelligence. You are working one-on-one with somebody, and you want to bring the best out of this individual. So what aspects are you bringing to how you coach that particular person? Are you inspiring them? Are you coaching with empathy or training with empathy? How do you help that person develop their own resilience? Your own resilience, when perhaps you're not seeing the results in your client that you would expect to see. All of those aspects, having your own self-awareness as a coach or as a fitness professional, knowing your limitations, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, what do you bring to the table, what do you do great at, what are the things you can work on. Even the awareness of your clients. What do you know about this particular client? What do you know about the psyche of this particular client in order for you to be able to get the best out of them? These are all emotional intelligence traits that I think encompass this broader conversation that we're having in terms of communication. And for purpose of this conversation, we're talking about, as a fitness professional, how do you communicate effectively with your target market?
At what point did you make the pivot into emotional intelligence specifically? Because it's it's kind of like a niche, I would say. I haven't had many people speak about it as something that they lead with. But what made you zero in on that? Was there a specific, an event or something? Or
I think if you type in emotional intelligence into Google search, you will get millions upon millions of hits. When I first got into it, and I am a certified Genos emotional intelligence practitioner or intelligence coach, which is going back maybe 5 or 6 years now, there were not too many people who were talking about it. Okay? But at the same time, it was sort of becoming the flavor of the month, if you will. Something new in terms of, all right, what can we bring to the C-suite, or what can we bring to organizations in order to help these people become the best at what they're doing? That tag of flavor of the month has not just stayed, but has grown. Where now, if you're not leading with emotional intelligence, if you don't have team members in an organization who are able to practice gratitude, or lack self-awareness, or are struggling with resilience, if anything, the events that captured our world, this black swan of an event which changed our world forever, really brought that to the forefront. People trying to work from home, manage that situation, and still be productive. So whether it was stress, burnout, all of the things that people experience and are still experiencing. Trying to lead a team remotely. How do you do that? You absolutely need emotional intelligence. So I started that journey a few years ago, and now it has actually become a really important part of my work.
Yeah.
And most of the people that I work with in some form or fashion involves emotional intelligence. And I link it, in fact, to all of the other areas that I'm in, whether it's personal branding, professional image, public speaking, and some of these other areas.
Yeah. It would be interesting to speak about your acting career too. How does that fit into all this? Because it's like, okay, you're talking about corporate world, this, then you're an actor. It's like, what?
Right. Well, you did mention it.
Yeah.
And that is something that I enjoy doing. In fact, if anything, acting was my first love. In St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Partook in those musicals. I developed my chops, if you will, on stage.
Nice.
At Saints. And it's always been a part of my life. Even when I was living here, when I moved abroad, for a while, there was a hiatus. But when I came back to Kenya, I decided this was something that I thought I would do. There's a burgeoning, growing industry in terms of TV here in Kenya and movies. And so I tapped into that, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved in some really interesting and high-value productions. And I take that as seriously as my other corporate work, so to speak. So, I've been involved in TV series like Single Kiasi, on a telenovela Rich is shooting right now called Q, which is on Star Times. I'm involved in one right now called Second Family. I've done series like Changes. So I've done quite a few over the years.
Nice. What's that experience been like, growing as an actor? Do you think are your careers playing into each other, or do you have to get into a different mind frame when you're doing
I'm going to link everything back to fitness. This is a fitness podcast. So, for sure. I mean, acting, in fact, ideally should be something that would be a standalone career. Certainly for somebody like me. But, that's not how I'm doing it right now. But in terms of what I am able to bring to the table, being on set from 6:30 in the morning until 6:30 in the evening requires a length of stamina. It requires some form of self-management.
Resilience.
Okay? It requires resilience. So the things that I do in my other life, my fitness journey, and the things that I talk about in terms of my professional life, I absolutely bring to my life as an actor. You're dealing with a myriad of individuals. Okay?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with somebody who's displaying certain strong, unhealthy emotions? How do you deal with your own particular emotions, being on set, maybe things not going the way that they are? So certainly that aspect, we talk about emotional intelligence, you need to bring as an actor, as a profession, and as I've mentioned before, fitness. You're on set, maybe the food is not the best or doesn't give you what you need. And I'm not saying that that's always the case. But what are you able to do in terms of your own personal life, fitness, diet, sleep, in order for you to be able to be on set for an entire day or an entire week, or to go through the rigors of a 6-month shoot like I recently did with this telenovela. Yeah. So you will, for me, everything sort of links back to yourself as an individual. What are you bringing to the table? And for me, since fitness, particularly at this stage in my life, is an important part of how I live my life, I see the benefits in everything that I do. Whether I'm acting, whether I have to stand or sit on stage or on a set, or indeed in front of clients when I'm doing my talking or my coaching. The ability to be able to stand there from morning until evening without being exhausted.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I just had a thought right now, and I hope you can indulge me on this, because it's not specifically fitness related, but it's to do with some of the things you've touched on. And the thing that sparked it is the first time I heard of an image consultant, that term image consultant, I think the first time it really came into my conscious was seeing people such as Kevin Samuels. I don't know if you know who he is. So anyone who doesn't know who he is, you can quickly just Google search him to find out what he's about. But
the late Kevin
Samuels, American, he started off leading with that kind of content initially before all the other stuff that a lot of people tend to know him for. But I think what he pivoted into is something that is clearly at the top of a lot of young men's minds. You're an older man, and I think in today's world, as a younger man, I can acknowledge that there's been a missing piece of connecting the two worlds. Especially in Kenya, I can speak for us, where a lot of young men are misguided. And I know for myself, fitness played a huge role in me figuring myself out, challenging myself to do something that was hard. Seeing the results from it gave me something to work on that was it brought a lot of other things into my consciousness that helped me a lot along my journey. So why I'm bringing up Kevin Samuels is because of that pivot. And I think he probably identified some of the ways in which all these things are connected. And for you today, you brought us into the fitness. You've brought about the fitness angle, but it all works to build that holistic man. And there's a video I actually saw you had posted on your social media a while back where you are speaking to men specifically. I think it was an event. I don't know how much you've delved into speaking to men specifically. What are the challenges you see out there, and how can we bring it all home?
Yeah, there are no two ways about it. I think young men particularly are facing a particular crisis, if I can use that word, given everything that's going on today. And the Kevin Samuels of this world, the Andrew Tates, you can Google these guys, are speaking to these disaffected young men, particularly young men. Now, what I will say as a disclaimer is, again, be a little bit selective with some of the information that you pick from these people in the manosphere. Your Andrew Tates, there are certain things that I agree with, and there are certain things that I vehemently disagree with. So be a little bit selective in terms of what you take on board. But it still leads to that greater question which you're asking is, what is it about these young men that lets a lot of them feel that they're leading lives that are not of any value, or they seem to be lost, or they don't have any direction? It's a combination of factors, obviously. It's a combination of factors, not least of which is social media, which has brought these people in terms of that. Now, I'm of a certain generation where we grew up without social media. If you needed to communicate with somebody, it was done in person or it was done physically. And so I think there are certain aspects in terms of how I was brought up, certainly just in terms of communication. If I wanted to develop a relationship with somebody, the relationship was not over an app. It was physically meeting someone. What I'm going to say, which is that the aspects of my work in terms of what I do, in terms of public image, and I wouldn't necessarily call myself an image consultant. I think for me, it's about how do you present yourself to your target market. And how do you present yourself in terms of physically? How do you present yourself in terms of what you wear, in terms of how you speak, in terms of how you're seen, heard, and remembered? I think it would behoove the young people out there to begin to look at what successful men, we're talking about men here, have done throughout the ages. The blueprint on being a successful individual or successful man has been written. There is nobody who's going to come up with anything that's revolutionary or new. Looking at what successful people throughout the ages have done, and particularly throughout the ages, because of the world that we live in, what did a Mandela do? What did a Kenyatta do? You know, if you want to look at the political sphere, but you can look at, you know, whatever aspect, politics, entertainment, that is up to you. But what did they do? And begin to either read or get that information. Starts with your day, for example. Okay? What time do you get up? What do you do when you get up? What are you doing to set yourself up for success? I'm going to leave this. It's called the cash formula. Number one, seek the knowledge. And seek the knowledge not just from the gurus of today, but the gurus of yesteryear. Okay? A is attitude. Begin to look at your attitude toward the circumstances that you're in. Okay? For better or for worse, what is your attitude towards your circumstances, towards yourself, towards other people? S is begin to develop these skills. And for me, I focus a lot on the soft skills or the social skills. The ability to communicate, the ability to speak, the ability to present yourself in a way that attracts people towards you, both personally and professionally. And then look at the H, the cash, the habits that you have. What are the success habits that you have? Okay? Success habits on a daily basis. You know, read Atomic Habits by James Clear that you can begin to bring into your life. And I think for me, that would be the starting point in terms of perhaps living a life that's more fulfilling, particularly as a young man in this challenging world. Yeah.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I thought it's just because of how pertinent that issue is to young men today. I think it's helpful to have that perspective from an older man, because also it somehow works out that it's just more respectable coming from you. There's only so much, man, you need to do this that I can do on here, you know. So I think it was a cool opportunity for us.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Any last thoughts about any last thoughts you would like to leave us with as we close this session?
Yeah, so I think for me, what I'm passionate about is about living a life when you are approaching its maturity, living a fulfilled life. I can't tell you again how proud I am in terms of my physicality. As I said, I am in the best shape of my life, even when I was throwing massive weights in my 20s and 30s. People, you know, I have, you know, friends, colleagues, you know, people that I meet come and they can't get a good night's sleep. What are you doing what are those habits that you're putting into place, for example, to be able for you to be able to sleep, you know, well, those 7 or 8 hours that you're sleeping? Look at your diet. What are you ingesting? What are you putting into your body? And what are the subsequent results going to be of putting that in your body? And begin to really look at these things critically. Then, of course, there's the physical aspect. As I've said, you have got to get moving. You have got to stretch. You've got to move your limbs, and you've got to add some sort of resistance training. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are in life. And then I'm just going to add, I think, a lot of what our conversation has been about in terms of that emotional intelligence. Again, how do you handle what life throws at you? Okay? From the matatu that cuts you off in traffic. Okay? or the person who doesn't say good morning to you when you walk into the office. I mean, every day we are confronted with something that is going to make us feel a certain way. Okay? People say, okay, check your feelings at the door. No, don't check your feelings at the door. Bring those feelings in, but manage them in such a way that you can get the best out of what you want and the best out of the other person. So I think those are going to be
that's very
the things that I'm going to leave you with, or your audience with, I should say.
Yeah, the feelings are there, and I think also the mark of someone who is mature is that ability to manage them. Because I think there's a train of thought that tends to promote that we should just suffocate them. Just leave them. Just like do your best. Just push them down, and then just keep pushing them down. Push it until there's no more space to push them down. But I think overall that just works to fill you up, and then you explode at some point.
That could be one consequence. Yes, for sure.
Among so many others. Thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. I think you've helped bring a different twist to the show, which is really great. I think we've touched on a lot of different areas that are really helpful. And this is just an introduction also. Hopefully you can come back again sometime. Sure. We have more conversations, maybe if you want to talk about something a bit more specific.
Sure.
But check him out. I think you have a lot of different places people can go. Could you share some of those places? Yeah.
So I think my LinkedIn, that's usually the place that I send most people to in terms of a first point of contact. I use LinkedIn avidly. So my LinkedIn, and my name is Derek Bbanga with double B. I also have a presence on other platforms like Instagram and Twitter, but LinkedIn would be the best port of call.
Nice. So fitness, as you can see, has so many far-reaching effects. I think Derek is a living example of just the extent to which fitness can help you in so many aspects of your life. Hopefully you've reaped some benefit from this conversation. Reach out to him if you would like to have more conversations with him about maybe his services or his experience. He's a very open and very cool guy to talk to. So reach out to him, and asante sana. Looking forward to any other time we get to speak some more.
This was a good one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice. Till the next episode, we'll see you then. Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Shujaa Fitcast. For more information and business inquiries, email us at shujaafitnesswarrior@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at Shujaa_fitness on Instagram, at Shujaa Fitness on Facebook and TikTok, and subscribe to our channel at Shujaa Fitness on YouTube. For audio versions of this podcast, check us out on Spotify, Boomplay, and Apple Podcasts. This show was recorded and produced at the Represented Studio in Nairobi, Kenya. Special thanks to Lucid for the background music.